Chapter 1. The Bridge Builders series description. The Bridge Builders is a powerful 5-part contemporary drama about wealth, warning, justice, and the fight to rebuild America from the ground up. When financial analyst Elias Vance predicts a historic stock market collapse, the powerful people around him dismiss him as paranoid, foolish, and desperate for attention. But when the markets crash, jobs disappear, families lose homes, and entire communities fall into hardship, Elias's bet against Wall Street turns him into a billionaire overnight. Instead of using his fortune to buy more power for himself, Elias chooses a different path. He creates worker-owned companies, rescues struggling local businesses, builds affordable housing, funds legal aid, trains unemployed workers, and gives ordinary people a real stake in the wealth they help create. But as his movement grows, he faces powerful enemies in finance and government, betrayal from within his own family, and the difficult question of whether one man can challenge a system designed to protect the wealthy. The Bridge Builders is an epic story of one man's transformation from ignored whistleblower to revolutionary reformer, and of a nation learning that true prosperity is not measured by stock prices, but by whether its people can live with dignity. Part 1 Description, The Warning. Part 1, The Warning. For years, Elias Vance has seen the cracks nobody else wants to acknowledge. From his high-rise financial office overlooking Seattle, Elias studies the numbers behind America's booming stock market. Massive corporate debt, inflated housing prices, reckless lending, and powerful institutions gambling with ordinary people's futures. When he warns his bosses that a devastating collapse is coming, they laugh him out of the room and call him a fool. Determined not to watch another generation lose everything, Elias leaves his prestigious job and risks his reputation, his savings, and his family's stability by betting against the market. His decision strains his relationships and turns him into the target of ridicule. Then the unthinkable happens. The market crashes, millions suffer, and Elias becomes a billionaire in the middle of the storm. But as the country falls into despair, he makes a decision that will change his life forever. He will not become another wealthy man profiting from pain. He will use the collapse to begin building something better. Chapter 1, A Bad Bet. The men in the conference room laughed before Elias Vance had finished his presentation. It was not cruel laughter at first. It was the comfortable laughter of people who had spent their lives being right often enough that they mistook confidence for intelligence. The room sat 38 floors above downtown Seattle, surrounded by glass. Far below, rain darkened the streets and blurred the headlights into long yellow rivers. On the wall behind Elias, a chart sloped upward in red. Corporate debt had reached a level he had never seen. Housing prices had climbed far beyond what working families could reasonably pay. Retirement funds were entangled with speculative assets that depended on everything continuing to rise forever. Nothing rose forever. Elias clicked to the next slide. If credit tightens, he said, these firms cannot cover their debt payments. The funds holding their bonds will be forced to sell. That will hit pensions, insurance accounts, local banks, and municipal budgets. Calvin Rusk, the firm's chief investment officer, leaned back in his chair. His silver tie gleamed under the recessed lights. And what do you suggest? Rusk asked. That we pull out of every profitable position because you have a feeling? This isn't a feeling. It is not consensus either. Elias looked around the room. 11 executives. 11 expensive suits. 11 people who were paid extraordinary amounts of money to recognize danger before it reached the door. I am not asking for consensus, he said. I am asking you to look at the numbers. Rusk smiled, but his eyes were flat. The market is healthy, Mr. Vance. Employment is strong. Consumer confidence is up. Earnings are up. This firm does not trade on panic. Elias almost said, you trade on other people's panic every day. Instead, he collected his papers. At the elevator, his friend Adrian Bell caught up with him. Adrian had started at the firm the same year Elias had, and they had once shared cheap takeout in a basement apartment while promising each other they would never become the sort of men who forgot where they came from. Do not let Rusk get to you, Adrian said. He is under pressure. So are millions of people who will lose their homes when this breaks. Adrian sighed. Maybe. But you cannot save everyone by predicting the end of the world. I am not predicting the end of the world. What, then? Elias looked through the windows at the wet city below. Buses grinding along avenues, delivery drivers racing through rain, people hurrying home after work. I am predicting that the people who have the least will be asked to pay the most. That night, Elias went home to Silver Firs, where the rain drummed softly against the windows of the small house he shared with his wife, Naomi. Their daughter, Lena, was at the kitchen table, drawing a dragon for school. Their son, Micah, had fallen asleep on the couch with a book open against his chest. Naomi took one look at Elias's face and turned down the stove. They ignored you again, she said. They laughed. Naomi nodded, as if this were not new. It was not. For years, she had listened to Elias explain leverage, derivatives, debt ratios, credit default swaps, and the strange power of people making fortunes from transactions so complicated that no one outside the industry could understand them. She did not know every detail, but she understood the part that mattered. When he was worried, he became quiet. What are you going to do? She asked. Elias stared at the children. I think I'm going to leave. Naomi was silent for a long moment. Leave the firm? Yes. And do what? He gave a small, humorless laugh. Something everyone will call stupid. Naomi reached across the table and took his hand. Then make sure it is stupid for the right reason. Chapter 2. The Fools Fund. Vance Civic Capital began in a rented office above Don Alvarez Hardware on a gray street in Everett. The office had peeling paint, a leaking radiator, and a single window overlooking a parking lot. Elias furnished it with 2 desks, 3 second-hand chairs, and a coffee maker that produced liquid strong enough to wake the dead. His first employee was Mara Chen. Mara had worked as a quantitative analyst for a trading company in New York before returning home to care for her father after his stroke. She was brilliant, impatient, and suspicious of nearly everyone who claimed to want to change the world. When Elias explained his plan, she stared at him for nearly a minute. You want to short the market, she said. Certain sectors. You want to bet against companies that everyone thinks are unstoppable. Companies built on debt, inflated valuations, and political favors. And then what? Then we use the gains to build something better. Mara crossed her arms. That is not an investment thesis. That is a manifesto. Is that a no? It is an absolutely terrible idea, she said. Elias waited. Mara set her bag on the floor. When do I start? They worked late for months. They studied corporate balance sheets, loan portfolios, property valuations, insurance exposure, debt structures, and supply chain weaknesses. Elias focused on what people ignored because it was too uncomfortable to see. Mara found the hidden connections, the ways one company's debt could become another company's disaster. They built positions slowly and quietly. Meanwhile, the country celebrated. Stocks reached record highs. Financial news hosts smiled at glowing screens. Tech founders announced new fortunes. Private equity firms bought housing blocks, hospitals, and newspapers. Working people were told that if they did not feel prosperous, they simply needed to invest better, work harder, move faster, and stop complaining. At Thanksgiving, Elias's younger brother, Daniel, raised a glass at their mother's house. To the market, Daniel said. May it keep making us all richer. Everyone laughed. Elias did not. Daniel noticed. Oh, no. Do not tell me you are still doing that apocalypse thing. It is not an apocalypse thing. You left one of the best firms in the country to bet that America will fail. I left because the firm treated danger like an inconvenience. Daniel shook his head. You always have to be the smartest person in the room. The words landed harder than Elias expected. Their mother, Evelyn, tried to smooth things over. Your brother worries. That is all. No, Daniel said. He likes worrying. It makes him feel superior to people with normal jobs and normal lives. Elias stood from the table. I worry because people with normal jobs and normal lives are the ones who get crushed when wealthy people gamble. He left before dessert. 3 years later, the crash arrived. It began in the financial system, as such crashes often did, with words few people understood. Liquidity. Contagion. Insolvency. Credit freeze. Then it moved into ordinary life. Construction sites shut down. Warehouses laid off workers. Restaurants closed. Hospitals cut staff. Families opened retirement statements and found that decades of savings had vanished. The market did not merely fall. It tore through the country like a storm, ripping roofs from houses. Vance Civic Capital's positions surged. Mara stood in the office before sunrise, staring at a screen filled with numbers. "We did it," she whispered. Elias looked at the red arrows falling across the market. "No," he said. "They did it." On the 5th day of the crash, their fund crossed $1 billion. Mara turned to him. "What now?" Elias opened the notebook he had carried since leaving the tower. He wrote the sentence that would define the rest of his life. No one should get rich from disaster unless disaster becomes the beginning of repair. Part 2 description: the price of rescue.